These are the 15 creepiest and crazy adventure stories ever told on the Joe Rogan Podcast. Assassin Doctor. On the Joe Rogan Experience, number 2145, Joe and Colin had been riffing about medical quirks when Rogan suddenly asked, half-jokingly, whether Colin had ever crossed paths with one of those people who masquerade as doctors. Colin's laugh faded into a wince when he said he went to one.
Most important thing to them.
Have you read about guys who have pretended to be doctors and set up practices and operated on people and shit?
I went to one. I went to one and
For real?
His doctor was Dean Faiello, the man who posed as a Manhattan dermatologist without so much as a single medical license on record. Colin remembered walking into the office on a lonely Saturday. No receptionist, no hum of equipment, just dim lights and Faiello's too friendly grin. It felt off, but not off enough to bolt. The Novocaine felt wrong, the cut deeper than necessary, and the wound healed jagged. Colin left thinking, never again. He had no idea he had just been treated by a future headline.
What
The
a
guy.
psycho.
Yeah, and it was really he looked like, he was well-coiffed hair and these crazy eyebrows.
Is that the guy?
Yeah.
But I knew him 20 years ago. He looked much better.
Buried
Oh, he got
her
out, huh?
under- Whoa.
I don't know
let him
exactly
out.
how they were talking to him.
He got out. No, when he was young. That picture doesn't do him justice.
Was he
when
creepy
he was,
looking?
What's that?
Was he creepy?
Yeah, you got to see when he's young. The picture of when he's young. He looks like, not creepy, but he just looks like he would do it. Yeah, there he is on the left. That's Dean. Yeah.
That's when they caught him.
Yeah.
Wow. Fake doctor Dean Faiello
Yeah.
feared something would go wrong.
Yeah, I went to him.
Gee,
yeah.
you think? Did he have any medical history?
I bet he must have worked for an office because he had the keys to the doctor's office. He must have been like either a
He was
receptionist.
just a crazy person.
He was a receptionist or something, yeah.
And what year was this where he was doing all this
Oh,
stuff?
he's from Madison.
9 months later, the news broke. Faiello had treated Maria Cruz for a lesion on her tongue, dosing her with so much anesthesia, she stopped breathing. Instead of calling 911, he stuffed her body into a suitcase, poured cement over it, and hid it in his New Jersey garage. When investigators closed in, he fled to Costa Rica, partied under an alias, and tried to reinvent himself as a real estate mogul. U.S. Marshals tracked him down, cuffed him in a San Jose cafe, and extradited him in 2005.
Wow.
He worked
in
construction,
before
hair
being
removal.
employed at a day spa, became skilled at hair removal.
Yeah.
1996, he began his own practice, Skin Ovations, from an
Look.
office on Park Avenue. Wow.
The blood vessel removal, tattoo removal, and this. He's selling himself short. He also removed moles.
Wow.
That must have been the office, Park Avenue and 73rd.
So how did she die? How did this lady die?
Let's see. Lidocaine.
He had completed the same procedure on Cruz over a dozen times before without her experiencing an allergic reaction to lidocaine. Oh, he was not licensed to perform this procedure. It admitted doing at least 14 times on Cruz alone. He went on to claim that after some time, Cruz had bubbles coming out of her mouth and her body went limp. By his own account, he delayed calling for help, allegedly attempting CPR, but could not get her to start breathing again. He adds that despite being previously certified in electrolysis for hair removal, he didn't have the proper training for what to do when a patient goes into shock. Jesus Christ, what a crazy
Wow.
person. An unverified claim made by Faiello, who is not licensed or trained to make medical diagnoses, and claims that he didn't know how to check for a pulse. He admitted walking away while he believed she was dying of shock. Faiello later called a doctor he knew personally to explain his version of what happened to Cruz. According to Vanity Fair reporter Brian Burrow, the doctor told him to either call 911 or rush Cruz to a hospital emergency room. Instead of helping Cruz, Faiello shoved Cruz's body into a black suitcase, which had been stolen days earlier from his housemate, Mark Ritchie. Fiello claims he put the suitcase containing Maria Cruz in his car and drove straight home. Then he left her in the trunk for 2 days before finally removing her body into his garage, which was just undergoing renovations. It's unclear whether or not Maria Cruz was still alive when Fiello began to try to cover up his actions. Cruz's wallet and purse were discovered by Fiello's housemate inside a black gym bag placed under a rafter in the unfinished ceiling of the garage in August 2003, just 1 month after Fiello was kicked out. He later admitted in June 2003, nearly 3 months after Cruz was killed, that he had buried Cruz's body underneath the garage before pouring cement, right before a sale of the house was closed.
Now, the DA initially talked murder, but prosecutors accepted a plea to first-degree assault. Still, 20 years in a maximum security cell. Behind bars, Fiello told reporters that he never meant to kill anyone. He just wanted to help. 17 years later, in 2023, he walked out of prison on parole. The suitcase, the cement, the stolen white coat, none of it erased. Colin's scar is faint now, but he still feels a chill when he remembers an empty office, the quiet hum of a con man playing surgeon, and how close he came to becoming another tragic footnote in Dean Fiello's gruesome resume. Creepy Rainforest. In this episode 2013 with Joe, Paul starts by sharing the experience of getting lost in the rainforest, alone and terrified, a few days into what was meant to be a solo expedition. The Amazon, he explains, isn't a place where you can just go a little off trail and expect to come right back. It's a maze of uniform green, disorienting, overwhelming, and unforgiving. Even seasoned guides like himself get turned around. Tools like compasses, useless. GPS, batteries die. Navigation here is about bushcraft, instinct, and dead reckoning, with which even then the jungle wins more often than not. One night, exhausted and chewed up by mosquitoes thanks to a poorly designed hammock, Paul wakes to the chilling sound of breathing next to his face. He opens his eyes and finds himself 6 inches away from a jaguar. The apex predator simply growls in his ear and walks away. It's a moment that's surreal, humbling, and oddly spiritual.
Because it's all green, so you just like think you know what you're doing. Just last week, I took people, I wanted to cross from one trail to another trail, and I was like, I'm a guide, I can do this. And I came back out on the same trail like a half hour later, and I was like, yep, that's what I meant to do, let's go. And like, it happens to JJ all the time.
Really?
You cannot find your way in the
Do
jungle.
you use a compass?
Don't use a compass.
Why not?
Because actually, apparently some of the iron content and some of the saps in the trees pulls the needle. It doesn't work really well.
Even the trees are trying to trick you. Oh my God.
GPSs run out of batteries. You know, it's like you really just, you have to learn your bushcraft. You have to learn how to navigate in the jungle, and it's like which is pretty much, you have to get just amazing at dead reckoning and remembering your course, because it's so dense that like we play with people. We go, go see if you can go from here to there. And it's like they can't go there. They can't do that as soon as you leave the river. So like I had gone out on this solo, gotten lost, gotten scared, and then been like, oh shit, what if I just like into the wilded myself? What if now I'm gonna be the next kid that went and died in the Amazon? And like I like slept in the hammock, but this is like as I was learning, so I didn't realize that the hammock that I had bought had a mosquito net on top, but the back was not mosquito proof, so they could stick through. So my back was being destroyed by mosquitoes as I'm trying to sleep, and like a couple of nights of that. And so I finally fall asleep, and I wake up in the middle of the night, and I hear breathing right next to my face, and I like wanted to turn my headlamp on, and I just hear like right here, like I could feel her breath, and I was like 6 inches away from a jaguar's face, and she just like and then left, and she just came in. She wanted to see what that was. She was like, you're not gonna move, that's what you're not gonna do. She growled like right into my ear, and then later on. But that one's cute though. That's a cute picture. That's a cute jag.
Wow. And they vary in colors and the spots and everything, right? Like some of them are much darker.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, actually somebody recently was like, where do you see panthers? And I went on this whole thing of like, you know, a leopard or a jaguar, just like you can have albinos, you have a melanistic one. Yeah.
Wow.
So like people would call that a panther, but a panther's not a real, there's no animal that's a panther. It's like
Right.
a Kleenex. It's like it's just another name for it.
That is so beautiful.
But a black
Look
jag.
at that thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's beautiful.
Yeah, in South India they have the black leopards. Which
What an
are
amazing
stunning.
looking animal.
Despite the danger, Paul emphasizes that jaguars don't see humans as prey. Even in regions where they're plentiful, attacks are virtually unheard of. The animals are shy, elusive, and highly aware. In fact, one jaguar passed so close to him once that he could have reached out and touched it, yet it never flinched, simply walked right by, unaware of his presence. He explains how most people in the jungle scare animals off without even realizing it. With their shampoo, deodorant, and bug spray, they become walking scent bombs. By contrast, Paul showers in rivers, uses unscented gear, and lives out there for weeks. But the jungle holds more than just animals. Paul recalls stories of uncontacted tribes who use animal calls like bird or monkey sounds to communicate and even surround intruders. These aren't legends. People he knows have experienced it. One group of explorers was completely surrounded by mysterious calls from every direction, realizing too late that they'd been watched and outmaneuvered. It ended in a tragic standoff with one person shot, followed by a visible argument among the tribespeople, some furious that the trigger was pulled at all. These aren't savages. These are people with structure, rules, and intelligence beyond what outsiders can comprehend.
When you were saying that the uncontacted tribe were speaking in monkey calls, what are they doing?
So, JJ's dad used to tell us, he said, if you're ever out in the forest and something doesn't sound right, he was like, get out of there. And he was like, because they will use the tinamu calls, like the undulated tinamu is like, but like, we know what that sounds like, but we also know what it doesn't sound like. And so like every now and then you'll hear one that's, you know, different. And like we all get freaked out because we're like, that's how we do it. That's how JJ taught me to do it. Like if there was a bunch of tourists right there and JJ wanted me to come over and like chill with him and we wanted to go hang, he would just do that. You'd get my attention. And like, I know that it's not a tinamu, I know it's JJ. And so it's like, they've taken that to a whole nother level where they can communicate. And so there was a group of guys who was upriver and they got surrounded. They heard monkey calls coming from different directions. And they realized that they were completely surrounded. And they, like, at least one of the guys who was telling it to me, he got in the water and like crawled like a turtle and like escaped. And then the tribe showed up and then there was this whole showdown where they actually shot one of the community members. And then one of the guys who knows some of their language was saying that it looked like they were mad with the guy that shot the guy. They were mad with him. Like they were like, why did you do that? Now there's going to be retaliation. Like, why did you shoot him? And like there was like a whole discussion happening while these people were like huddled in the stream waiting to see if they got killed too. So it's like, I don't really, so when you get these loggers going in there, it's like, yo, we'll pay you to protect the rainforest. And like, you don't have to do this. You don't have to be going into these areas that are that dangerous. So at this point now though, through all of this though, we've established jungle keepers. We have 50,000 acres. We're trying to do 300,000 acres. And if we can do that, we'll basically be helping to establish one of the largest protected areas in the Amazon rainforest, which will encompass these uncontacted people, and they can stay uncontacted and they can stay safe and do whatever they want to do. And
This leads to Paul's conservation work. Through Jungle Keepers, he helped protect 50,000 acres of forest, aiming for 300,000. It's not just about saving trees. It's about preserving cultures, species, and mysteries. Some of these uncontacted people, he jokes, might be out there guarding ancient pyramids or giant sloths. But jokes aside, their way of thriving in the forest without tools, light, or help is nothing short of miraculous. The Amazon isn't just wild. it's a living intelligence. It watches, it decides, and as Paul's stories prove, it never forgets who doesn't belong. A Chain of Death. On the Joe Rogan Experience number 1726, featuring Chuck Palahniuk, Chuck shares the very strange story of his father's murder. Chuck Palahniuk recounted a deeply unsettling chapter from his personal life, the murder of his father, in a way that felt less like a straightforward tragedy and more like a story written by fate itself. The chain of events began when Chuck's father responded to a personal ad placed by a woman named Rita. The ad was titled Kismet, an Arabic word meaning fate or destiny. The word alone, loaded with the weight of predetermination, seemed to foreshadow the grim narrative that followed. Rita was a lawyer who worked closely with the prison system, someone Chuck's father found to be strikingly intelligent and captivating. They developed a relationship quickly, forming a connection that seemed promising, even hopeful.
3.
But has there been anything in your life that was so horrific that they couldn't imagine telling you?
You know, except for my father's murder, not really.
Maybe that was it?
Maybe that was it, but boy, that doesn't seem like it's big enough. I don't know.
How was your father murdered?
Dad was murdered in May of 1999. He had answered a personals ad for a woman who was looking for a boyfriend, and the ad was headlined Kismet. I believe that's the Arab word for fate. And Dad met with her. Her name was Rita. She was a lawyer. She had worked in the prison system in the Midwest. And Dad was really, really taken with her. She was really bright and really smart. And she had an ex-husband who had sexually abused her daughter from a different marriage. And they were pressing charges against this ex-husband, and he was going to go to prison. And she had met him while he was in prison, and she was doing legal work. And she had helped him get out of prison. So she helped him get out of prison. She'd married him. He had abused her daughter. She divorced him. She was prosecuting him to send him back to prison. Then she met my father. And this ex-husband had said that if he ever caught her with another man, he would kill them both. So my father was going to pick her up, and she was going to stay at his house in the mountains until the time of the trial. And as he was going to pick her up, he was going down this mountain road on his property, and a giant boulder broke free, and it rolled down the hillside, and it blocked the road. He couldn't get out. So he spent the day with this a lever, forcing this boulder off the road. And then he took a couple extra hours, and he made a sign that said Kismet Rock, so that he could label this boulder as a kind of landmark for when he brought her back to sequester her. And he had cleaned the house incredibly. The house was just neat as a pin and stocked with all this food. And, he really planned to have this fantastically sort of idyllic time sequestered with his new girlfriend.
But Rita came with a past, which was a dark and complicated one. She had previously been married to a man she met through her legal work while he was still incarcerated. She helped him gain early release, a gesture that ultimately backfired. After their marriage, Rita's ex-husband sexually abused her daughter, which led her to press charges against him. She divorced him and began the legal process to have him sent back to prison. However, her ex-husband was volatile and had threatened her. He warned that if he ever caught her with another man, he would kill them both. Despite this looming threat, Rita and Chuck's father continued their relationship. On what would have become the final day of his life, Chuck's father had gone to pick Rita up. He had even prepared a romantic gesture involving a large boulder near her property. He had marked it in some way to surprise her. However, just as he was leaving to meet her, a massive boulder rolled onto the road and blocked his car. The delay, though seemingly minor, proved fatal. By the time Chuck's father finally arrived at Rita's home, her ex-husband had already gotten there. A confrontation ensued. The ex-husband shot Chuck's father and pursued them into the house. As the wounded couple took refuge inside, the ex-husband set the house on fire. When the authorities recovered their bodies, the coroner determined they were both already dead before the fire consumed the structure. The details of Chuck's father's death was particularly harrowing. The bullet had ruptured his diaphragm, causing air to accumulate with every breath. As time passed, his lungs were increasingly compressed, making each breath shallower than the last. It took roughly 20 minutes for him to die by suffocation, a slow and agonizing death. And yet, within the horror of it all, the story took on an almost mythic structure, one that echoed back to Chuck's father's own traumatic childhood.
And then he went to pick her up. And when he went to pick her up, the ex-husband showed up and he shot my father. And my father and the woman took refuge in her house, and the man set fire to the house. And the house eventually collapsed. And the coroner says that they were both dead before the fire got to them. And the coroner says that because of the angle of the shot, my father probably took about 20 minutes to die because the bullet ruptured his diaphragm. So with every breath, he would have been accumulating air between the lung and the diaphragm. And so every breath would have been more and more shallow because his lungs would have been more and more constricted by this air above the diaphragm. But that eventually he'd suffocated. And all of this sounds horrible and tragic, but it forms this fantastic pattern in my father's life because my father, when he was very small, he lived in northern Idaho with this enormous Ukrainian family. And his father went kind of crazy one day. This is all public record. I've talked about this a lot. But his father took a rifle and walked around the house and tried to kill him, my father, and ultimately killed killed his wife, my father's mother, and then killed himself. But my father's earliest memories are of hiding underneath a bed as his father walked around the house in logging boots with a rifle, calling his name, trying to get him to come out so that he could be killed.
When Chuck's father was a small boy living in northern Idaho, his own father, Chuck's grandfather, had a mental breakdown. He took a rifle and walked around their house in heavy logging boots, calling out Chuck's father's name while looking to kill him. In the end, he murdered his wife, Chuck's grandmother, and then turned the gun on himself. Young Chuck's father only survived by hiding beneath a bed, terrified and searching for his mother, not knowing she was already dead. That early trauma shaped him profoundly. According to Chuck, his father spent his whole life searching for the woman, not just romantically, but almost spiritually. It was as if he had been haunted by a need to reclaim the mother who was taken from him so violently.
And so my father spent his entire life sort of looking for his mother, because as his father was trying to kill him, he was trying to find his mother, who at that point had been killed. And so my father really had this kind of serial pattern with women. He was always looking, in a way, for the woman. And ultimately, he was shot by the man with a gun in the way that he would have been shot when he was 4 years old. And one of the uncanny things is that their bodies were only preserved because a bed on the second floor of this structure, as it was burning, the bed fell over their bodies and insulated their bodies. And my father had escaped his father by hiding underneath a bed when he was a small child. And the fact that the Lonely Hearts ad was headlined Kismet, and the fact that this boulder rolled down in front of my father's car just as he was leaving,
that prevented him from getting there in time, where he probably would have been able to escape before the ex-boyfriend arrived.
or I don't know, there's so many odd, bizarre coincidences and synchronicities. You know, you would have to really dismiss a lot of things in order to make this not something significant.
Not fate, or not some reoccurring theme woven into time.
And in a way that, you know, understanding all these different aspects of it, it provides a comfort that it doesn't seem like this random thing. It seems like something that some aspect of my father's life that was coming full circle.
And then, decades later, the cycle seemed to repeat itself with chilling symmetry. He was killed by a man wielding a rifle, just as his own father had intended to do to him as a child. And even more uncanny was the way his body was preserved. As the fire tore through the house, a bed from the upper floor collapsed, fell on top of Chuck's father and Rita, shielding them from the flames. The very object that had once protected him as a boy, hiding under a bed to escape death, was present again in death, this time covering him as if sealing the tragic loop his life had formed. Rescuing the Amazon. In episode number 1240 of the Joe Rogan Experience, wildlife biologist and adventurer Forrest Galante recounted a harrowing and awe-inspiring trip to the Colombian Amazon, in one of the wildest places he'd ever been. Unlike many other locations he's explored, this region of the jungle was so remote and untouched due to ongoing conflict in Colombia that no Westerners have been there in over 60 years. When Forrest and his team arrived, the village they flew into had never seen white people before. They were greeted with curiosity and cautious friendliness. The villagers were fascinated with their hair, eye color, and general appearance, though their culture was notably stoic, with very little emotional display. To reach this village, Galante and his crew flew in a World War II-era DC-3 cargo plane, landing on an old airstrip that had once been used by cocaine traffickers. They then traveled another 200 kilometers deeper into the jungle. Despite the isolation, the villagers spoke Spanish, taught by early Spanish settlers centuries ago, but would switch to their native Amazonian dialect when discussing things privately. Interestingly, the tribe had no concept of national borders and didn't identify as Colombian. To them, they were simply Amazonian.
Oh, right.
For sure.
In the jungle, not just the rivers and the lakes or whatever's out there, but the actual jungle itself.
It was incredible. The jungle there. So we were in Colombian Amazon, and like, talk about untouched by people. There's been this kind of ongoing conflict in Colombia for many, many years. So we were the first Westerners to go there in over 60 years. So the village we flew into, they'd literally never seen white people before. And then we went 200 kilometers from that. So like middle of nowhere.
Did they want to touch you?
Yeah, hair. Because their hair was very dark and very different. And like, I'm not particularly fair, but just to touch like the hair and see the blue eyes and stuff, they were just loving it.
Friendly?
Super friendly. Like, the culture was very stoic. Like, there wasn't a lot of smiling or crying. You know, there wasn't like a lot of emotional exchange. But straight away they came and greeted us, like shook hands, you know, said hello. It was really cool.
Wow, that's gotta be. Now, how do you set something like that up? Do you have like a liaison that like acts as a go-between between you and the tribes?
Yeah, so we did in this case have one guy who communicated. I speak Spanglish, I guess, and they all speak Spanish from back in the day. So we set it all up. It's part of the wildlife stuff that I do. We literally flew a DC-3, a World War II cargo plane, into this cocaine dealer's airstrip.
What?
And then that's how we got there. I mean, like, mind-blowing stuff.
Current cocaine dealer or former?
Former, yeah. Well, you know,
who knows?
TBD.
It's still Colombia, right?
Exactly.
Wow.
So yeah, I was that one was really cool, really remote.
How crazy is it that they learned Spanish from people who came over on boats from Spain and it just stuck?
Isn't that nuts? And took over the whole like
region.
the whole world. And here's
for-
this tribe in the middle of the Amazon that has this language from another continent.
Well, and Brazil, right? From Portugal.
Right.
It's really incredible when you stop and think about it. I mean, it's incredible, but it's also part of it's a little sad. Like, wouldn't you have loved to have heard what their original language was?
Oh, absolutely.
Like what it sounded like?
Well, they did. So it's funny because when they didn't want us to understand what they were talking about, they would switch to their native English.
The people lived in almost complete subsistence, with no motors, no fuel, or contact with the outside world. Galante noted their physical adaptability to the terrain, barefoot with wide, sturdy feet, ideal for climbing and gripping muddy, uneven jungle surfaces. And in contrast, he and his team, clad in high-tech boots and gear, stumbled and slipped, appearing clumsy to the locals.
What is the name of their tribe?
Also, I'm not even sure. They're so isolated, they're unaware of what country they live in. They don't even know that they're in Colombia.
Really?
Really. They're just like, to them, they're Amazonian. They're not Colombian, Ecuadorian, Brazilian. They're Amazonian.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So they just stay. Like where they are, they stay.
And the village we were in is literally, I think it's over 200 kilometers from the next village of 15 or so people. And they don't have fuel. They don't have motors. They just in this pocket and they just subsistence live.
And they're all barefoot, right?
Yeah.
Do they have those crazy splayed out feet?
Big feet, because they're not very big people. They're like small Indian people, but really big, kind of useful feet. And the way that they could run up and down trees and climb stuff, I mean, it was unbelievable. Like so much more athletic than you could imagine.
I'd imagine, right? They've been doing that their whole life.
Their
right?
whole lives, yeah.
Now, when I say splayed out feet, what I'm talking about is that people that walk barefoot in the jungle for long periods of time, like their whole life, their toes spread out and their feet almost look like a hand.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
I did not pay enough attention. That might have been the case, but I didn't notice
looking
it.
at their feet.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is kind of weird thing to stare at dudes' feet.
Yeah, for sure.
But Steve Ranella, who's a good friend of mine, told me about that. He was in Guyana and is the same thing, and they actually got some pictures and videos of these people's feet. But look at these guys up there.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh no, I didn't notice anything like that.
Yeah. This is the that's how do you say that? Huarani?
Sounds right.
Huarani, you think?
Huarani.
Huarani Indian splayed feet. So it's very strange. Like it's kind of the opposite of what happens to women when they jam their feet into those little pointy shoes,
right?
Where they get the toes kind of smoosh onto each other.
The ballet feet.
Yeah, it's horrible. Instead of that, they're all like crazy spread out. What in the fuck is going on there? The guy's
The
got
top
like
is hands, I think. but-
wood. Yeah, the top is hands, but the bottom is like wood feet.
But
Like,
that's got to be like what our feet are supposed to be.
probably right.
Right?
Yeah, thick ass toes that actually have muscles in them that move.
That you can use like a tool, like your hand.
Yeah. So, and these guys just can climb up trees with them, so they grip the side of the tree with their feet like a hand.
Oh, I mean, I didn't notice, like I say, the feet just like that specifically, but the way they could, like, everything's covered in mud down there, right? It's all wet. It rains every day. And they could run up and down these tree trunks, like, to get up and down the village. And here's me and my crew with our awkward cameras and stuff, and we're slipping and sliding.
One striking feature was the prevalence of health issues. Nearly every villager suffered from ringworm, respiratory infections, or other untreated ailments. A local shaman served as their sole healthcare provider, relying on traditional herbs and rituals. However, the villagers eagerly accepted help when Galante's team, accompanied by a medic, offered modern medicine. With the shaman's blessing, they administered deworming pills and basic treatment, even though the medic was honest in admitting that conditions like asthma in a young child likely wouldn't be managed in the long term. They faced a moral dilemma of intervening in a closed ecosystem with temporary aid, but decided it was worth the effort.
When you're around these people, like, what do they do if they get injured?
So, funny you asked that, because we kind of had that same question, right? And they don't leave. They stay in the village. They have a shaman at the village who blessed us with a crazy green powder, and that's a whole nother story. But they have a shaman, and he is their doctor. However, he has no access to any Western medicine. So it's only his learned knowledge handed down through generations, plus jungle powders and whatnot. And that's it. So we spent today, because we had a medic with us, doing like kind of village help, if you will. Everybody had ringworm. Everybody had respiratory infections. There were a lot of lady problems in the village that our medic had to deal with. I mean, there was a lot of health issues, and you don't even realize it.
Write something down before I forget. I'm sorry, it's totally unrelated. But
No, all good.
There's a doctor named Peter Hotez that's coming on the podcast, and I have to follow up on him. When you start talking about the people in the jungle, he's an actual doctor who is he specializes in infectious diseases in jungle and tropical climates, and he's like, everyone's infected with something.
Everyone.
He'd
He'd have a heyday down there.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's probably been.
Yeah.
But so when these people have ringworm and all these different infections, do they treat it? Do they have like some naturopathic cure or some shit?
I think it's kind of a 50-50. Like, a lot of it they don't treat because it's just part of everyday life. Like, when I say everybody had ringworm, I meant everybody had it. So I don't think there was any kind of treatment or cure. It was just kind of part of them.
Huh.
But other things, the witch doctor or the shaman was trying to treat. And then we kind of went in and we had like medication for ringworm, so we dewormed everybody, and with the shaman's blessing, and he was like super excited to have Western medicine in the village. And
Perhaps the most sobering realization came from the deep limitations of that help. While the deworming and medications brought some relief, the jungle remains a place where illness is omnipresent and survival is a constant battle. Mystery in the Rainforest. That story Diane Boyd told on the Joe Rogan Experience number 2213 is the kind of tale that sticks with you because it's real. It's not a ghost story or a campfire myth. It's a seasoned wildlife biologist, someone who spent decades among apex predators, saying that humans, not wolves, were the only things that ever truly terrified her in the woods. And that says a lot. She wasn't scared because of a howl in the dark or a pair of glowing eyes in the bush. She was scared because two drunk men in the middle of nowhere knew her name and came uninvited to her isolated cabin in the dead of winter. And that was not just unsettling, it was haunting.
So I was in my cabin at night, and the dogs started growling. I had very big dogs. I always have dogs. And I looked out my window, and it was winter, and it was cold, and I could see a couple of guys out there lurking around, and I was in the middle of nowhere. And then it kind of digressed from there. So I for the first and only time in my life, I pulled a gun on these guys.
Really?
Yeah, I was in danger.
What were they doing out there?
Well, they came to pay me a visit.
They knew who you were?
They called me by name, which was really freaky. So you think somebody in the woods walking around scary? Wait till you...
What's even more chilling is how she describes that moment. Not panicking, not screaming, but focused, predatory calm. It's only after the danger passed that the adrenaline dropped and she began to shake. That kind of trauma response tells you everything. You don't prepare for that kind of moment. You survive it, then deal with the aftermath. Joe points out how different it is to see someone in the woods versus the city. Really hits home. In the city, people are everywhere. But in the woods, people are not supposed to be there unless they have a reason. So when you see someone out there, especially at night, especially when you're alone, your gut knows something's off.
Long story. I was working behind the customs station right on the Canadian border, and they were hauling logs down out of Canada, bringing in the customs station. They would have to transfer the logs to an American truck, and then the Canadian trucks would go back. And I temporarily took a job as the knot bumper at the log deck landing, which means my job was to run a chainsaw, trim off the branches, trim the length of the log to exactly fit the log bed. Anyway, so I was around, so these loggers knew who I was, and I was cordial enough. But it was two of those guys.
Oh.
Yeah, and I never told the story till I wrote this book, and I just thought it's a part of me that's very personal. It's a part of me that I learned from. It's never happened again. And I had one old logger, old Bob. He saw me on the road the next day. I was pretty shook up. And he stopped. We chatted often. And he had seen a wolf. He'd taken a picture of it. So anyway, we chat, and he says, so I hear you had some visitors last night. And I looked it up because he's up in his log truck. I said, yeah. He says, you don't have to worry. That won't happen again. He was kind of like watching out for me.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, because we had kind of befriended each other because he'd spotted this wolf and he'd taken pictures of it. Anyway, yeah.
So how did he find out that you had visitors?
The Logger Network, the CB radios. I don't know. I didn't tell anybody. But he knew right away.
Yeah, it's humans that you have to be scared of.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, you asked. That's.
Yeah, there's no serial killer mountain lions, right? They just have a purpose in nature.
Yeah, they just kill because they kill because they eat.
Well, that's what their job is.
People are weird.
People are
Your little
creepy.
sign about there being weird. I love that.
Yeah, especially men. Men in the woods are scary. So,
And that gut instinct, that primal awareness, is exactly why the woods are so inherently eerie. You're isolated. It's dark. It's quiet, or worse, full of unfamiliar sounds. And when the only company is your mind, your imagination starts to sprint. There's a reason why so many horror stories begin in the forest. The woods strip away modern safety. No streetlights, no sirens, no neighbors, just towering trees, shadows, and the creeping dread that someone or something might be watching. So, after hearing Diane's story, after really understanding the psychology of being alone in the wild, would you go into the woods alone at night? In North Sentinel Island, it's almost like time stood still. A tribe that refuses all contact, defending its isolation with deadly force. And there's a good reason. History has proven time and time again that whether in the Amazon or remote islands, contact often meant disease, destruction, and the end of entire cultures. Conjuring House. On the Joe Rogan Experience number 2033 with Matt Rife, the conversation takes a fascinatingly creepy turn when Matt dives into his experience ghost hunting the infamous Conjuring House, the very place that inspired the movie. Located in Harrisville, Rhode Island, the house is steeped in nearly 300 years of tragedy and supernatural legend. Built in 1736, the property has seen everything from mysterious deaths to alleged suicides and drownings. But the most chilling tale tied to it is that of Bethesda Sherman, a 19th century woman rumored to have practiced witchcraft. Local legend accuses her of sacrificing a baby to Satan and cursing the land before her death, a curse meant to torment anyone who dared to live there.
yeah.
I will say I wasn't as scared as I've been in a lot of places we've been. There is some kind of solace to the house, but you get to know the history of it, and it does make sense that there'd be something here. I mean, it's on some ley lines of water underground. There was wars fought there. There's apparently bodies buried on the property in the walls of the property structures and stuff. There's a lot of history that goes into it that just makes for kind of the perfect storm for some creepy shit. But I didn't witness anything that was that insane. Some items moved, some cars rolled off of the children's dressers a couple of times on cue. And that's the one thing I do pride ourselves in these videos is so often we get absolutely nothing because we don't fake anything. So you only get to see the highlights. Like there's so many times we'll go to a place that is so notoriously haunted and we'll be there for 10 hours and get absolutely nothing. And it sucks, but that makes when something does happen that much more valuable. It's so much more impressive.
What do you think? So do you think a ghost is like the soul of a person that's left behind? Or do you think the ghost is almost like space and time because of a horrible...
The Perrin family moved into the house in 1971, and that's when the real nightmare began. According to Matt and Joe's conversation, the Perrins experienced escalating paranormal activity. Chairs sliding across the floor, doors creaking open and shut without cause, voices whispering in empty rooms, and even the terrifying stench of rotting flesh appearing out of nowhere. Most disturbing were the shadowy figures the family frequently spotted lurking in the corners. Eventually, the parents reached out to the legendary paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. Lorraine reportedly sensed a demonic presence and attempted to contact the spirits through a seance. That seance turned violent. Caroline Perrin, the mother, allegedly became possessed, speaking in languages she didn't know and being thrown across the room by unseen forces. Roger Perrin, terrified by what he saw, ordered the Warrens to leave. The family stuck it out, but the hauntings never stopped until they eventually left later that same year. But then Joe and Matt pivot the conversation into an interesting psychological direction. Does expectation manifest fear? Joe argues that if you walk into a place knowing it's haunted, your brain might play tricks on you. Fear amplifies every sound, shadow, and creak. He likens it to turning off the lights in your basement. That primal fear kicks in, and you start sprinting up the stairs because it feels like something is chasing you. Not because it is, but because your mind fills in the blanks.
Yeah, that things contain memories. And this is one of the reasons why, like, people kind of universally support this idea that if someone was murdered in a house, you must tell the people, inform the people that are about to buy it. You have to tell them, hey, somebody got murdered in this house. Like, maybe you don't want to buy this house.
Now,
maybe you should think about it.
Does the potential owner have to ask that information?
It's a good question.
I'd want to know.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think they should have to inform you because there's something about someone being murdered in a spot that freaks us out. And this is my question. How you knew the conjured house was haunted, right? So you go there with this feeling and this expectation. That's what I always wonder about these things. Like how much of this isn't just imagining things. This is like the mind itself seems to have some unmeasured effect on the world.
Yeah.
I think the way you think has an unmeasured effect in terms of like this, there's energy that you put out, there's connections you make with people. They're very, very unmeasured.
And you can manifest your own perception of things for sure.
Yeah. So what my concern is like if you go into a place with a pre-existing knowledge of ghosts, like you think ghosts are here, you think ghosts are real, you have this thought in your mind that you maybe experience a ghost in this place that's haunted. You're at this elevated level of anticipation. You're probably really nervous and kind of freaked out, and your imagination starts firing up. And I'm not even saying that these people are lying or that they're seeing things that aren't there. I'm saying maybe you make things show up. Maybe you see memories. Maybe you experience some horrible energy that existed in this spot 50 years ago, 100 years ago, that there's like ways you can tune in.
Matt Rife totally relates. He says that during his night at the Conjuring House, it was hard to separate real paranormal phenomena from the intense pressure and paranoia that comes with being in such a legendary place. Even a gust of wind felt like a whisper from another world. The mind, especially in dark and confined spaces, can become its own horror movie director. Either way, Matt says he wouldn't spend the night there again. Man-made soil. Some of the most fascinating pieces of evidence in South America have come out recently about these channels and pathways they found in the Amazon that could not have been created any other way but by humans creating irrigation. It appears like grids, like a city grid. And Joe was ready for the discussion with Graham Hancock in episode 2051. The Amazon is a colossal mystery. It's one of the subjects that I explore in depth in America before. First of all, to give some basic figures, the Amazon basin is huge. The Amazon basin is about 7 million square kilometers in area, and within it, 5.5 million square kilometers remains almost entirely unstudied by archaeologists. And that's the 5.5 million square kilometers that is still covered by dense rainforest.
Yeah, so this shows the Amazon, 6.7 million square kilometers. There's still 5.5 million left covered by rainforest. That's bigger than the entire subcontinent of India. And hardly any archaeology has been done. And the archaeology that is being done is fascinating. And it's particularly in the state of Acre, in the southwest of Brazil, that we're seeing these extraordinary geoglyphs. Now, I'm on the left there. That's Martti Parsanen from the University of Helsinki, and that is Fabio Filho, who's the LiDAR expert, and that's Alceu Ranzi, who's a Brazilian geographer and archaeologist. And we're looking at the latest LiDAR discoveries, and there I'm about to take off in a plane with these two guys. It was just incredible to fly over there. I've flown over the Nazca lines many times, but to fly over this and to see these huge earthworks on a scale of hundreds of meters sitting there, often encroached on by farms, was very, very, very exciting.
And what's the conventional explanation for these things?
There is no conventional explanation because really it's only begun to be.
And to put that into perspective, 5.5 million square kilometers is the size of the entire Indian subcontinent. So it's like saying, we've done world archaeology, but we've just ignored India. We've done world archaeology, but we've just ignored the Amazon. It's the same argument, 5.5 million square kilometers. The view was, again, this was a dogma. There was a preconception. Human beings couldn't have flourished in the Amazon. It's not a resource-rich area. The soils are poor. It's a difficult area, challenging to get to, very far from the Bering Straits. So the view was that humans hadn't entered the Amazon until about 1,000 years ago. And then gradually, little by little, that view has begun to change. And it's begun to change because of the tragic clearances of the Amazon, because the Amazon rainforest is literally being cut down and turned into soybean farms and cattle ranches.
And then we have these enormous structures that are appearing in the Amazon, which are being referred to as geoglyphs. They call them geoglyphs after the Nazca lines, actually. The Nazca lines in Peru are huge ground images, sometimes geometrical in form, sometimes showing animals or birds or spiders, other creatures, often actually showing Amazonian animals. But in the Brazilian Amazon, in the state of Acre, as a result of clearances of the Amazon that have been done for farming purposes, there's this rush to just cut the Amazon down and replace it with cattle ranches and soybean farms. Those clearances have revealed something that, again, according to the old view of the Amazon, shouldn't be there, which is gigantic earthworks, huge ones, a bit like the henges in Europe, enormous embankments, ditches, and in geometrical forms. So you get enormous squares, enormous circles. You get a circle within a square. They keep repeating these geometrical images, and they're thousands of years old. When we were down there just recently, we had a local LiDAR guy working with us. These days, you don't have to even use an airplane to find things with LiDAR. You can fly LiDAR off a drone. And flying his drone within a mile of known structures that are outside the rainforest now, he found 2 more huge geoglyphs under the rainforest canopy, which will be investigated. And this is bizarre and puzzling. They reckon, the team working on this, that's Martti Parsanen of the University of Helsinki and Alceu Ranzi, who's a Brazilian archaeologist and geologist, they reckon that there's thousands of these things still under the rainforest canopy, and there's a huge untold story. So one of the places I would look for a lost civilization is the Amazon rainforest.
There was a Spanish explorer who went down the Amazon River system in 1541 to 1542. He was the first European to cross the entire length of South America, from west to east, along the Amazon. He reported seeing incredible cities, advanced arts and crafts, millions of people, and a thriving culture. And 100 years later, when other Europeans got into the Amazon, they couldn't find these cities. So they said, "Oh, Francisco Orellana," that was his name, made it all up. Within 50 years, they were completely overgrown by the jungle. And that's why they were not seen by the explorers who came in 100 years later. But now the jungle is being cleared, and those cities are emerging. And we can say that in a city like London, which had a population of roughly 50,000 in the 16th century, there were cities of that size all over the Amazon, huge numbers of them. And a possible total population of the Amazon that exceeded 20 million people. Yes, 20 million. This is the latest evidence from the Amazon. And then you ask yourself, how did they do that? How did they feed 20 million people in the Amazon? Because it's a fact, rainforest soils are poor. It's one of the reasons that soybean farms are a really stupid idea, because once you clear the rainforest, the land is largely unfertile, and you can't grow stuff on it for very long. So how did they feed all these people? The answer was they invented a soil, and that soil has a name. It's called terra praeter. Archaeologists refer to it as Amazonian dark earths or Amazonian black earth. It's a man-made soil. It's thousands of years old. It's full of microbes that are not found in adjoining soil. It's based around biochar. And you can take a handful of 8,000-year-old terra praeter and you can add it to a barren soil, and that soil will instantly become fertile. It's highly sought after in the Amazon, and it explains how they fed these people. There was science in the Amazon.
It used up. It's a kind of miracle. It's not fully understood. Nobody can say they fully understand terra praeter. But what is fully understood, and it's understood by settlers, is that if they plant on terra praeter, they're going to get rich crops coming out of it.
Is there a way to reproduce that in America?
Attempts have been made to reproduce it, and biochar is one of the words that comes to mind. There's even indications that some of the modern indigenous peoples of the Amazon are still creating terra praeter. This is a whole mystery that needs to be investigated much further. We're looking at the oldest examples are more than 8,000 years old, and that's just in the areas that have been surveyed. Very likely terra praeter goes back much, much, much earlier than that.
Because it's such an issue with modern farmlands where they have to use these modern fertilizers. They have to use,
which are not helpful in many ways.
And they run off. Like the topsoil's worn out.
Yeah.
So if they could figure out a way to reproduce terra praeter.
This would be one of the many ways in which our so-called high-tech industrialized society could learn from indigenous cultures. We could learn a lot from them about living in harmony with the environment and about clever things like terra praeter, clever things like curare, which is another Amazonian invention, which is the basis of modern anesthesiology. How did they do that? There's 11 ingredients in curare, and those ingredients are not active on their...
Secondly, new evidence previously not recognized. The Amazon is basically a garden. The Amazon is a man-made rainforest. There are certain trees like Brazil nut trees or the ice cream bean tree, which are food crops which are very, very valuable. And they dominate the tree regime in the Amazon. They're what's referred to as hyper-dominant species. In other words, people living in the Amazon over thousands of years selected certain trees, which they then cultivated and grew. So the whole thing is not simply a wild, pristine rainforest. It was a very ancient man-made environment. And emerging from that man-made environment, as well as evidence of large cities, large populations, and this mysterious dark earth, are huge geometrical structures. The Haunted Doll. On the Joe Rogan Experience number 1922, featuring paranormal investigators Sam and Colby tell Joe Rogan about a doll that is more haunted than Annabelle. And if you aren't aware, the Annabelle doll is one of the most famous haunted objects in paranormal history.
When it comes to all of your paranormal experiences, that chair was the freakiest to you?
That chair was the most physically changing. Again, I think the freakiest moments are always at the beginning because it's the first time you ever hear anything. So that Queen Mary story was what changed my psyche the most. But that one was the most physically
Don't forget about the Robert the Doll location, though. There was a time I've never seen Sam almost throw up from, and that was a huge physical reaction. That just happened.
Just happened. I've never.
Is this a new one?
This is a newer one. We just came out with it last month. Apparently, Robert the Doll. If you don't know the story, have you ever heard of Annabelle?
Yes.
So Annabelle is
The
a
movie?
movie franchise. It's based
Yeah.
on a real doll. So the real doll is like apparently the second most haunted in the world, and Robert is the number one most haunted in the world. And so
Robert's more haunted than Annabelle?
apparently that's what people say.
When's he getting his movie?
Exactly. He's got plenty
Is
of
that what it
movies
looks
about
like?
him.
He's just got a plain face?
He needs better
I
blurred it.
look on.
Blurred it?
Yeah.
Look,
We blurred it.
We blurred it for purposes, but if you
Why?
want to just Google image
Why'd
it,
you
Because
blur it?
it's because you're not supposed to take pictures or film it. That's like the biggest no-no. And we're obviously there filming a YouTube video. And funny enough, like going back to Zach
Show it,
Bagans,
Jamie.
It's creepy. Look at
Oh,
if
that
you
looks
stare
like a little
Peggy
hobo.
in the eyes, like you get cursed. And so it's the same thing with this doll.
Oh.
And so we blurred it for like our fans.
So your fans don't get cursed?
Yeah,
Are we
like
getting
through a
cursed right
screen.
now?
I think
We
you might
could
get
be.
cursed.
What the fuck, Jamie? Don't curse me.
Do you want me to show it on the show?
Now, the story of the Annabelle doll began in 1970 when a woman purchased the doll from a hobby store as a gift for her daughter, Donna, a nursing student. Donna and her roommate, Angie, kept the doll in their apartment. And soon, strange things started happening. The doll would change positions when no one was looking. Notes reading, "Help me," would appear on parchment paper, even though no parchment paper was in the house. And at times, Donna would find the doll in different rooms from where she had left it. One night, a friend named Lou, who had always felt uneasy about the doll, had a terrifying experience. He woke up paralyzed, seeing the doll moving toward him before he blacked out. Another time, Lou claimed the doll attacked him, leaving deep claw marks on his chest that mysteriously vanished hours later. Now, apparently, the Annabelle doll is the second most haunted doll in the world, with a doll named Robert being number one. Take a listen. Robert the doll is a legendary haunted doll housed in the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida. The doll originally belonged to Robert Eugene Otto, a young boy who reportedly treated it as if it were alive. Over time, strange occurrences were linked to the doll, such as unexplained giggling. The doll seemingly changed expressions, furniture moving on its own, and the people hearing footsteps when no one was there. Now, in 2020, Ozzy Osbourne and his son Jack Osbourne visited Key West for their show, The Osbournes Want to Believe. While they were there, they saw Robert the doll in the museum. Ozzy reportedly refused to respect the rules and joked about the doll, which some believe led to supernatural consequences. And shortly after, Ozzy suffered a serious health scare.
What we didn't realize is how many people had experiences with the doll.
Yeah.
They calculated to more than 10,000 people have written in apology letters to Robert to ask for forgiveness because of the curse that he put on them. 10,000 individuals. Like, maybe even if 50% of those are bullshit, there are 5,000 people out there that genuinely believe they have been cursed by this doll by taking a picture of it.
Including Ozzy Osbourne.
What? Ozzy wrote a letter?
Yeah, well, it wasn't a letter.
Sorry.
On his show?
Parkinson's. I think he has Parkinson's right now, I believe.
Right.
And he blames that on Robert the doll because the story is there's like a big like touristy shop at the end, and he bought like one of the little Robert the doll plushies and like put it in a microwave and like was making fun of it and stuff, and then claims that he got Parkinson's because of that. So,
Well, a lot of people get Parkinson's without that. Ozzy Osbourne blames Year of Hell on Haunted Doll. Holy shit. Look at him. Oh my God. The Black Sabbath rocker was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease last year and underwent spinal surgery following a fall at his home. Makes the claim that his family's new reality TV show, I guess it should have said. The Osbournes Want to Believe. The show sees his son, Jack, 34, trying to persuade Ozzy, 71, mom, Sharon, 68, and sister Kelly, 35, to believe in the paranormal, including ghosts, UFOs, fairies, and werewolves. One episode sees Jack produce a doll named Robert that he reveals is the original doll that inspired the Chucky horror movie franchise. Jack says so the actual story of Robert the doll is that it's cursed by the spirit of his owner. If you disrespect him, make fun of him, take a picture without asking, or even handle him, you'll be cursed and terrible things will begin to happen in your life. Ozzy throws the doll to the floor saying, "You think it's a fucking joke? It's bad luck. I keep telling you, you keep thinking it's fucking not. But just look at what I'm saying. Just look at what's going on with me. You think it's a joke? Just look at me. It ain't bad luck."
He had a fall that aggravated a previous injury, requiring surgery. His health struggles worsened for months, leading fans to speculate that Robert had cursed him. Some even urged Ozzy to send an apology letter to Robert to lift the supposed curse. In an episode of The Osbournes Want to Believe, Jack revealed that he personally sent an apology letter to Robert on behalf of his dad. The letter reportedly asked for forgiveness in case they had offended the doll. It was like Jean Robert Otto. Jean Robert Otto, or Robert Jean Otto, and he gave his first name and his clothes to this doll. And so the kid and the doll became best friends for years and years and years. And he basically embodied this guy and just became Robert himself. But over the course of his childhood, and all the way up until I think he had left his parents' house to go to college, he would have horrible things happen to him because of this doll. And this doll was allegedly taken from Germany at this shop. It was called the Steiff. The same company that created the original teddy bear created this doll. So from the original teddy bear company, he brought this doll from Germany to give to this guy in Florida. And throughout his entire childhood, chairs would be moved. All these horrible bad luck things would happen. To the parents, it would seem like he was arguing with someone in the room. And they'd hear two voices. And when the parents would run into the room, it was just him and the doll. Which is creepy because the parents would say that they heard their little kid's voice and then an older, deep man's voice.
And what is the story behind this doll? Like, why is it supposedly haunted?
So this guy it's like a 3.5 foot tall doll. It's like a life-size type of doll. It's really weird. He gave it to his son, and the son's name was Robert Otto.
It was like Jean Robert Otto.
Jean Robert Otto, or Robert Jean Otto, and he gave his first name and his clothes to this doll. And so the kid and the doll became best friends for years and years and years. And he basically embodied this guy and just became Robert himself. But over the course of his childhood and all the way up until I think he had left his parents' house to go to college, he would have horrible things happen to him because of this doll. And this doll was allegedly taken from like Germany at this the shop, the company.
It was like a Steiff. It was called the Steiff, the same company that created like the original teddy bear.
Yeah.
Created this doll.
So from the original teddy bear company, he brought this doll from Germany to give this guy in Florida, and throughout his entire childhood, like things will like chairs would be moved, like all these horrible bad luck things would happen. Like he would almost. To the parents, it would seem like he was arguing with someone in the room, and they'd hear two voices, and then when the parents would run into the room, it was just him and the doll. And
Which is creepy because the parents would say that they heard like their little kid's voice and then like an older, deep, like man's voice.
Oh, Christ.
Talking back and forth. And apparently that was Robert, but the big theory about Robert is that he was also one of these like egregore in an object sort of like, I don't know, creatures, I guess, puppets, I guess you could say, because Gene would always blame everything that he did wrong on the doll. So, like, if he would, like, if, you know, furniture would be, like, all around his room or whatever, his parents would come try to ground him, he'd be like, no, Robert did it. And so all that negativity going towards this doll for his entire life, like, is why people believe that it has, like, evil to it. Like, it manifested this evil.
It's supposed to
Can you
be bad luck.
imagine being outside your child's room and you hear your kid talking, and then you hear someone responding.
Like an old man.
Just like a low voice, no, that's not what we're going to do, Billy.
I would cry.
And then
instantly.
you open up the door, and it's just the doll sitting there with your kid.
And it looks like that?
Yeah,
Oh
that's
my
a
God.
dead-faced doll, too. It's
Yeah.
there's something creepy about the lack of expression that doll
For
has.
real. And the crazy thing too is like our guides there were saying that it will like swallow every once in a while, or like you could see it blink and stuff.
Talking back and forth, and apparently that was Robert. But the big theory about Robert is that he was also one of these Yggdrasils, and an object, sort of, I don't know, creature. I guess puppets, I guess you would say. because Gene would always blame everything that he did wrong on the doll. So if furniture would be all around his room or whatever, his parents would come and try to ground him. And he'd be like, no, Robert did it. And so all that negativity going towards this doll for his entire life is why people believe that it has evil to it. It manifested this evil. One of the most chilling stories involves a woman who openly mocked Robert while visiting the museum. She laughed at him, made fun of the legend, and refused to ask permission before taking a photo. That night, she experienced a series of nightmares where Robert appeared, staring at her with his beady black eyes. Over the next few weeks, her car broke down unexpectedly. She lost her wallet and phone under bizarre circumstances. She fell down the stairs, injuring her leg. Terrified, she wrote an apology letter to Robert, and according to her, the strange misfortunes stopped shortly after. Also, museum employees who worked at the museum where Robert is housed also reported disturbing events related to Robert. Some claim Robert's facial expressions change when they look away. One staff member said that they heard tapping inside of Robert's glass case, even though the doll hadn't moved. Others reported feeling uneasy or watched whenever near the doll. While skeptics believe that these stories are just coincidences, many people refuse to take chances with Robert the doll. The 50-foot snake. Forrest Galante doesn't chase adrenaline for the sake of it. He doesn't leap out of planes or scale cliffs to feel alive. But drop him in a swamp with a 200-pound anaconda? That's where the pulse quickens. So when Joe asked him his thoughts about the giant anacondas in episode 1927, he gets goosebumps just thinking about it. Not because he's a thrill seeker, but because those moments stay etched in his bones. They're not just personal conquests. They're part of the work. Darting a bear, wrestling with a lion, swimming with an anaconda, it fuels him for weeks. It's not performative danger. It's a brush with nature's raw edge. And when it comes to the most fabled of beasts, the giant snake, Forrest is all in. He lights up at the mention of it. There's talk of 30-foot anacondas, which he believes are entirely possible, but he goes a step further. It's a region teeming with life, thick with secrets. You've got every condition for megafauna, wet, dense forest, high prey availability, but no known supersized snake. That's odd. And then he drops the story. During World War II, a decorated Belgian colonel flying over the Congo claimed to have seen a snake so large, so absurd, that it rose from the earth and struck at his plane. Not just him, his 2 passengers saw it too. All 3 swore by what they witnessed, a snake at least 50 feet long, and with a head the size of a child's mattress.
Been this thing about enormous anacondas that live in the rainforest.
So, yeah, there's fascinating. So I love anacondas. I believe, and I've got a colleague, Brian Fry, in Australia actually, and he has a similar belief that there are 30-foot anacondas. Now, 30 is a big anaconda, but you're talking about those mysterious, like 50, 100-footers.
Yeah.
Okay, so take out the Amazon and take out anacondas for a second.
Okay.
All right? Think about where all the largest snakes are in the world. Okay?
Florida.
Well, now, yes, but we've got all these wet tropical environments that house these huge snakes. In Indonesia, you have reticulated pythons, you have Burmese pythons, you have African rock pythons, Indian rock pythons, anacondas, all these big snakes.
Yeah.
The only place that has a wet, tropical, humid, high density of prey environment that doesn't have a massive snake is the Congo, Central Africa. Now,
interesting.
Stay with me. That area is home to some African rock python stuff, but not big monster anaconda-sized ones, right? But during World War II, there was a colonel who flew over there, and this was a well-respected colonel. I'm sure, Jamie, you'll be able to find this very quickly. A well-respected, I forget, he had his wings or his patch of honor or whatever, very distinguished, who him and his 2 passengers in the plane both reported a 100-foot long snake. They flew over it once. They're like, wait a minute, what is that? They were Dutch Belgium in the Congo. They flew over it once, went, what is that? And flew over it 2 more times to verify it, and got so low to the ground that they said the snake struck at the airplane, and all 3 people, the pilot, this well-respected colonel, and the 2 passengers, had the exact same story of this giant snake.
There's even a blurry photo. He sees a bigger picture. The Congo is barely explored biologically. If a monster like that exists in low numbers, it's entirely plausible we've just missed it, especially if only local tribes, far from satellite data and zoological societies, have seen it. Then he pulls up a photo from his Instagram. An 18-foot anaconda coiled beside him, its body thick as a truck tire, its eyes like marbles of ancient glass. That one tipped over at 200 pounds, and even that felt like staring into the prehistoric past. Now imagine one twice that length, with a head 3 feet wide. You're not a man to it, you're a tic-tac.
Yeah, here's the picture.
They took a photo of it?
They did. Yeah, they did. They're in very low densities. So, that's the real photo over on the left there.
What did they think it was?
They thought it was a giant snake, a 50-foot long.
So that's the photo right there?
I believe so. But the story's fascinating of these colonels.
But they don't know like what kind of snake. They don't know if it was an anaconda or a python or.
It would be an undescribed species because the only snake there, the African rock python, doesn't get that big.
What is the biggest snake that we know? Oh, it says it measured approximately 50 feet in length, saw brown-green with a white belly, has a triangle-shaped jaw and a head 3 by 2 feet. Oh my God, a 3-foot head. The photo was later analyzed and verified to be genuine. Van Leerd claims that, is that how you say his name?
I'm not sure, but that was the colonel.
Do these snakes exist? Forrest doesn't claim certainty, but he believes, not just because of the old stories, but because nature has a way of hiding her biggest cards in the deepest, darkest corners of the map. The White Feather. This segment from the Joe Rogan Experience number 2243, featuring Julian Lennon, explores a deeply fascinating intersection between personal experience, spirituality, and theoretical physics, anchored by 2 mysterious events in Julian's life. The first story Julian shares is about a white feather, a symbol that carries profound emotional and spiritual weight for him. Years before Julian received it, his father, John Lennon, had told him that if he ever died, he would send a sign in the form of a white feather. Years later, while visiting Australia, Julian was given a white feather by an Aboriginal tribal leader, a gesture completely unsolicited and serendipitous. The symbolism was too strong to ignore. For Julian, it was a message from his father beyond the grave, sparking the creation of the White Feather Foundation, an organization dedicated to humanitarian and environmental causes.
I have a foundation called the White Feather Foundation, and we try to help people all over the world, and it started, I know that you have interest in indigenous cultures.
Sure.
And I don't know if you know the backstory to the White Feather Foundation at all.
I don't.
Okay, so here we go.
Okay.
I was on tour with probably my most, at least outside of America, most well-known song. It was a number 1 and top 10 in countries all over the world except for America. And it was called Saltwater. And Saltwater is about environmental and humanitarian issues. And I was number 1 in Australia. I was doing all kinds of shows. I was doing promo and tour as well. And I found myself in Adelaide. And I got this call from the hotel management saying, excuse me, Mr. Lennon, but there's an Aboriginal tribe down here with TV crews who want to say hi. And I thought it was like an on-the-road prank. I said, yeah, sure. Why would they be coming to see me? And they called back and they said, no, this is serious. Can you come down, please? And so I think TV crews, Aboriginal tribe, what's this about? And so I kind of get dolled up a little bit because I don't know what the TV shows are or cameras.
Right.
Yeah. So I go down, and in the lobby there's a little platform and about 30 people, half of them indigenous, TV crews, a bunch of other stuff. And I honestly have no idea what it's about. And this woman, who was the elder of this particular tribe called the Mourning People, walked up to me and presented me with a male swan's white feather, which is about yay big, and said, can you help us? You have a voice. Can you help us?
Joe Rogan calls the symbolism so on the nose it's impossible to dismiss, prompting a broader conversation about the unexplained and possibly divine. This leads Julian to recount another extraordinary experience, this time in Mexico. While staying at a guest house he had never visited before, Julian described drifting off to sleep and seeing what he believes were see-through Mayan figures dancing around a fire. At breakfast the next morning, he hesitantly mentioned it to the hostess, who casually revealed that the property was built on a Mayan burial ground. She then brought out Mayan artifacts and an extensive historical book. And as Julian flipped through it, he recognized the exact headdress and skirt colors he had seen in his vision. Earthy tones and sky blue in a very specific arrangement. The shock of visual confirmation, especially on a property tied to ancient spiritual history, left Julian feeling that there's so much more that we don't know that lives and breathes and exists around us.
And so
What specifically did they want help with?
Well, I'll tell you. Initially, I didn't know what their problems were. I imagined that it would be the same as most other indigenous tribes around the world that have had issues, And they said, can you help us? And I said, I'll do it for the children. So I guess what I was saying is the next generation I can, try and. Anyway, so that this woman was called Irish. She was the elder. She's since passed in the last year or so. But I spent 10 years making a documentary with a best friend, Kim Kindersley, who initiated this whole thing. We made a documentary called Whale Dreamers, independent. We had no money really behind it, no sponsorship. We won about 8 international independent film awards, which was great. But the backstory to this is that Dad had said to me, and I couldn't tell you when or where, just was one of those times that we were together. He just said that, if something ever happens to me, that I'll let you know that to let you know that I'm okay, or that we're all going to be okay.
From here, the conversation takes a philosophical turn. Julian suggests that the human eye may only perceive a fraction of what truly exists. Joe Rogan builds on that by pointing out that eyes themselves are relatively recent evolutionary development, dating back around 500 to 600 million years. Before that, there was no such thing as seeing. Early life forms used light-sensitive proteins to detect brightness, but actual vision took hundreds of millions of years to evolve. Joe argues that assuming our senses gives us a full picture of reality is flawed. If eyes evolved, then clearly our perception is limited, and we might be missing entire layers of existence. This concept dovetails into string theory, a framework in theoretical physics proposing that the universe may actually contain 10 or 11 dimensions. We experience only 3 spatial dimensions and 1 time dimension, but string theory posts that other dimensions exist in ways we cannot detect, either because they're curled up too tightly to observe or lie outside the range of our biological perception. Near-death experience. In the Joe Rogan Experience, number 1518, David Cho, the eccentric artist known for his bold spirit and unpredictable life, shares a deeply unsettling hitchhiking story from his early days traveling across America in the late 1990s. At the time, David was a young, broke artist who found freedom and inspiration by crisscrossing the country via hitchhiking and train hopping. With no money and nothing to lose, he saw these dangerous, gritty experiences as a kind of raw education about life, people, and himself. David explains to Joe Rogan that most people who picked him up while hitchhiking usually did so for two reasons. One, they had a long, boring drive and just wanted someone to talk to. Or number two, more intriguingly, they wanted him to talk to them as if looking for a human connection, a listener, a confessor.
I might be the most American person. Like, I've been to every fucking state. I've hitchhiked from the time I was 15 to every fucking state, every country, and I've talked, and because, would a black guy be able to do that? Would a white guy be able to do that? When people see, oh, that guy's Chinese, he's like Jackie Chan, or he's, whatever they think, they don't think that I'm going to do anything or say anything or I'm going to, pose any threat. So they just open up and they say the most, I don't know, like, when I started hitchhiking, people said, no one's going to pick you up, right? Like 60s, 70s, everyone hitchhiked, and then something weird happened in the 80s where like, you're going to get raped, kidnapped, murdered, But I go, I don't think so. I think if I put my thumb out and ask for help, someone's going to give it to me. And with that, I got to see the world for free. I got to go everywhere. And much like what happened was I would sit shotgun and I'm getting these free rides. And two things would happen. Either the driver has a long drive and they want someone to talk to, or they want me to talk to them. And something would happen. And like, I'm in the car right now with a complete stranger. Anything could happen. And the first hour is always small talk. How long you been on the road? What would you do? It's all that kind of stuff. Something switches when they know the ride's I'm about to get out or whatever. I'm never going to see this guy.
He describes the pattern of these rides. The first hour or so are filled with light conversation, small talk, exchanging names, destinations, backgrounds. But as the ride neared its end, something always changed. David said it was almost like the drivers knew they'd never see him again. So in those last 10 minutes, they would drop their mask, the pleasantries would vanish, and out would come confessions, secrets, and in some cases, disturbing admissions. One particular story stands out as especially terrifying. David recounts being picked up by a man somewhere in the Midwest. As usual, the drive starts off friendly, maybe even forgettable. But as they near the town where David plans to get dropped off, the driver becomes quiet, then suddenly starts talking about killing people, calmly, casually. The man tells David that he's hurt people before, possibly even killed someone, and described it not with remorse, but with an eerie, emotionless tone.
Everything. Drugs, incest, I killed somebody, like murder.
A guy told
murder
you?
Confessions.
Really?
I've heard the most insane.
Hold one at a time. Murder confession.
I don't know if I should retell it.
You definitely should be.
A guy confessed to me that he was thinking of raping me when I stayed at his house.
Oh, Jesus. You stayed at his house? You didn't just hitchhike, you hitch-housed?
I was in the deep south. It was like I was trying to hitchhike from LA to New York City. I was with my friend Brian. Same thing. No one's going to pick up two fucking dudes. And John Wayne picks us up, cowboy guy. 10-gallon hat, Damn, you boys look, hot out there. Get in the car. And he's telling us about shrimp po' boys, and he works on a offshore oil rig, and it's 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and it's just 2 weeks off right now. So he's like, "Where are you guys headed?" And we're like, "We're just trying to get to New York." New York? What you want to go there for? A bunch of queers out there. I don't know. We want to check it out. You guys want to stay at my house tonight? Like, this guy looks like grandpa. Just cowboy boots, cowboy hat, just big gut. Like, he's a dude.
Right.
Yeah, I'm young. I'm 17 or 18 at this time. We get to his house in fuck, this is what I'm talking about. Tiny town in Louisiana, deep south.
Okay.
Like, we get in his house, Die Hard movie collection, Rambo movie collection, shotguns, and
lube.
Just a dude, just a man's man. And he has and his part-time job is an anesthesiologist. That
part-time anesthesiologist.
Part-time and then part-time offshore oil rig.
David, realizing the danger he might be in, tries to stay calm. He doesn't ask questions. He doesn't react. He just nods along and lets the man talk and waits for the moment to safely get out of the car. There's no dramatic ending, no violence, no police report. Just that harrowing psychological tension of being in the presence of someone potentially capable of horrible things, stuck in a moving car in the middle of nowhere. The entire ride becomes a metaphor for the dark underbelly of humanity, the things people bottle up until they feel safe enough to say them out loud, or feel reckless enough to let them spill. For David, the road was less about the destination and more about the bizarre theater of human nature playing out in gas stations, truck stops, and back seats.
On his couch, and he goes, he's gonna go to sleep soon. Let's just fucking stay the night. It's fucking air conditioned in here, and then let's leave first thing in the morning before he wakes up. I'm like, okay, fuck it, let's just do it. All right, boys, I'm gonna turn in. I'm like, yes. So we take the couch, and I go, let's sleep in a formation, and let's take turns. You stay. We should have just left. We should have just left. You go. You stay up for an hour, and then wake me up. I'll stay up for an hour. And then we'll leave crack of dawn. You know. I had a pocket knife, so I slept like this. I took the knife and I put the thing like this, and I slept like that, and I stayed up for the first hour, and I see him walking around his room. The lights are on. And I'm like, this guy's not going to sleep. Midnight, 1 a.m. He's still. I'm like, what the fuck? Why won't this guy go to sleep?
Putting his masks on.
So I nudge Brian. I go, hey, it's your turn. I got him. I'm gonna fucking pass out. He's out cold. I'm like, fuck, dude. Fuck, man. I'm too tired, and I go, okay, I'm just gonna stay up the whole night. So I'm up. I'm like, guys are closing. Bring him back up again. Gripping the knife, and then sometime around 5:30 in the morning or something, my eyes are closed, but you know when you feel someone.
Mm-hmm.
So he comes out of his room, and he's standing there, and I could see, and then I oh shit, and then I grip the knife, and I go, this is it. It's gonna happen right now. And he just leaves. He goes out the door, and I go, oh fuck, like.
He tells Joe that these types of experiences happened often, and that the road had a way of drawing out confessions from strangers, especially when there were no consequences and no chance of being seen again. Brutality of Nature. In an expansive and often surprising controversial journey in episode 1407, Joe Rogan and Michael Malice navigate a diverse landscape of topics, painting a rich narrative with bizarre natural phenomena, societal critiques, explorations of altered states, and deep dives into controversial theories. Their discussion often begins in the strange and brutal realm of nature. Joe Rogan and Michael Malice marvel at creatures like the tarantula hawk wasp, which paralyzes and lays eggs inside tarantulas, whose offspring then consume them alive. They pondered the parasitic nature of the rafflesia flower, the world's largest, which lives entirely within another vine and emits a corpse-like odor to attract flies. Other plant oddities like Duvaldiandra and White's Ellonia are described as mimicking meat or an anus to lure insects, highlighting nature's sheer variety and perceived mistakes.
Tarantula hawk wasps. Yeah,
right.
they're
that big fucker that Maynard sent me.
So this is one of the. There's a guy who made a scale, right, and he got stung by all the different insects. And this is, I think, 5. There's also a 5+. They're very hard to get you to sting them. There's a guy who online goes through and gets them all stung. But the reason they're so dangerous or so venomous, what they do is they sting the tarantula, lay their eggs inside the tarantula, and then tarantula is eaten alive by the offspring for weeks.
Right.
And then when this was discovered, this kind of stuff in the Middle Ages, they were like, this is a big theological dilemma, because God, why would God make this happen?
Yeah, why would God do that?
Nature is, I mean, I could go down this rabbit hole for hours.
Please do.
Yeah, I mean,
have you seen that gigantic flower that they found that smells like shit?
So one of the cousins to that flower is called something infanticida. So the insane thing about that flower, Rafflesia, it's the largest flower in the world. It only lasts 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But the plant,
it's a parasite.
Right. So the plant that it comes from has no stems, roots, or leaves.
Yeah.
So you can't keep it on display because it is entirely inside another species of vine.
Yeah, it's completely parasitic, right?
Yeah.
It just sits there, and it's fucking huge. Look at that thing.
Yeah, and they smell. They're called corpse flowers because they smell like rotting flesh too.
How weird.
And they don't know why it's so big.
I guess to trap rats. That's what I would imagine.
No, it does. It's not carnivorous. It's the flower.
Just get sneaky.
Yeah,
they're adapting, bro. That's what it is. They get ready to eat people. Look how big they are.
They're gorgeous.
They are beautiful. Oh wow! Look at that one where the guy's got his hand on it before it blooms.
Yeah.
So that's what it looks like sitting on the ground, and then it pops open. That's so fucking.
The conversation extends to mind-controlling fungi, like the cordyceps mushroom, which erupts from infected ants, and aquatic worms that compel grasshoppers to commit suicide. Michael Malice observes that the majority of species actually parasitic, an easier way to survive. They also express fascination with deep-sea creatures, such as the bioluminescent deep staria jellyfish and dragonfish. The narrative then shifts to sharp critiques of modern society and media, often centered on what the speakers perceive as wokeness. Michael Malice highlights casting changes in productions like Frozen and Legion of Superheroes, where characters' races are altered without narrative explanation. They also discuss Greta Thunberg, noting her self-identified autism and questioning the motivations behind certain environmental narratives. A serious, poignant part of their dialogue addresses child molestation, prompted by Michael Malice's friend sharing his experience. They emphasize the hidden prevalence of this issue and the critical need for victims to feel safe speaking out, contrasting it with the perceived push to normalize pedophilia as an inclination, which they vehemently reject. A significant segment of their story looks into the world of psychedelics, connecting them to ancient spiritual and religious experiences. Joe Rogan and Michael Malice hypothesize that figures like the Oracle of Delphi or the burning bush in the Bible might have been influenced by natural hallucinogens like DMT from the acacia bush. They recount historical theories, including John Marco Allegro's controversial claim that early Christianity was rooted in psychedelic mushroom experiences and fertility rituals. Joe Rogan shares his own profound DMT experience, describing it as a temporary death that eliminates the fear of dying and inspires a desire to be a better person.
Or if you could stop.
Have you tried the new ones like Moxie and TX6 or something?
What, new weed?
No, there's new types of like psychedelics.
Oh, I don't
You're over that shit?
I don't need that. The stuff that's real is good enough. These people want to try something other than mushrooms? Like, what are you looking for? Acid's not strong enough for you?
I don't think it... there's one that you could turn off.
Oh, you turn it off?
Yeah.
Like with a switch? Like an
like
app?
No, like, you know, like if you're drunk, you can kind of make yourself sober if you need to. So this is a psychedelic that you can switch off.
Oh,
What's it called? Is it Moxie?
This
Hold
is
on.
Moxie. It's 5-MeO.
Yeah.
MIPT.
What is it called? There's Moxie and then 2CB is the other one.
I've heard of 2CB from the Kanye song.
Oh, is that from the Kanye song?
An analog of the more popular drug 5-MeO-DIPT. Foxymethoxy.
Isn't that great? It's got an old-timey name. I've never done it.
Interesting. Foxymethoxy is a great name.
So it's like, I guess, hipster mushrooms. You probably haven't heard of it.
Well, they're always coming up with new things to avoid certain drug tests where they just alter a chemical just slightly. And it doesn't fit. That's where 5-MeO DMT was not classified as one of the banned psychedelics in the 1970 Sweeping Psychedelic Act. And dimethyltryptamine was labeled. 5-MeO is DMT with an oxygen molecule attached to it, which eliminates some. I don't know exactly how it works, but the visuals are very different. It looks very different. It feels very different. It's way more potent, and it was legal forever. Like, you could order it in the year 2000s, we would get it from a fucking chemical company where you ordered over the internet, and they would send you like a aspirin bottle of the shit, and you could literally put the entire city on the moon with that that little aspirin bottle.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
It was so potent, and it's this white, pure powder that is like straight from this laboratory.
Yeah, pharmaceutical grade.
Pharmaceutical grade,
Yeah.
not for human consumption. 5-methoxy-dimethyltryptamine. And we took it, and it just puts you in the center of the fucking universe. You feel like you're a part of every cell and every atom and every neutron.
And finally, their narrative explores various conspiracy theories and criticisms of powerful institutions. Joe Rogan and Michael Malice express deep skepticism about Jeffrey Epstein's death, pointing to the absence of public perp walk photos, his usual jail privileges, and the disappearance of files as evidence of a cover-up involving powerful figures. They discuss the concept of merchants of doubt, individuals allegedly hired to discredit scientific consensus on issues like tobacco and climate change. Government surveillance, as revealed by Edward Snowden, is framed as an alarming overreach. Geopolitical tensions with Iran and the use of drone strikes are viewed with criticism, questioning motivations and consequences. Woven throughout these diverse subjects are anecdotes about modern art, critiquing stupid pieces at LACMA, social media psyops by state-funded agency like Russia's IRA, and personal reflections on their comedic craft and the nature of their public platform. Ultimately, Joe Rogan and Michael Malice offer a free-flowing, often humorous, and always unfiltered narrative that invites listeners to question conventional wisdom and explore the hidden complexities of the world around them. Lost Civilization. In episode 2215, Graham Hancock's narrative to Joe as an investigative journalist and author looks at his challenging perspectives on human history and the entrenched resistance from mainstream archaeology. The conversation begins with a recap of Hancock's previous debate with archaeologist Flint Dibble, whom Joe Rogan notes played fast and loose with the truth and distorted quite a bit of information. Hancock criticizes Dibble's arrogance and the pervasive desire to win rather than to get to the truth. This sets the stage for Hancock's central argument. Mainstream archaeology is an arrogant, very controlling discipline that will fight tooth and nail to maintain that narrative, including using dirty tricks. He posts that this discipline often abuses its power to slap down any point of view that doesn't agree with theirs, underestimating the public's intelligence.
I'll say years ago was the first person who noticed that there are these huge geometrical structures emerging out of the Amazon jungle, and he noticed it on a flight on a commercial aircraft in an area that happened to have been cleared by local farmers for planting crops. That there was this massive geometrical earthwork there, and that he actually coined the term geoglyphs for these because he compared them in some ways with the Nazca lines, which again are really only visible from the air. You get suddenly the massive scope and extent of these things, and it's same with the geoglyphs in the Amazon. And here's the thing: the ones we know about up till now we largely know about them because of these tragic clearances of the Amazon rainforest, which is a maybe short-term economic gain, but is a long-term really not a.
Hancock then presents a wealth of evidence he believes points to a lost civilization. He highlights archaeological acceptance of human safaring to Cyprus 14,000 years ago and Australia 50,000 years ago, despite no ships surviving, demonstrating that lack of physical evidence doesn't negate ancient capabilities. He debunks Dibble's claim about domesticated seeds, suggesting that survivors of a global cataclysm, likely during the Younger Dryas period, brought knowledge of domestication, not the crops themselves. A fascinating point in the narrative is the White Sands, New Mexico footprints, human traces dated over 23,000 years old, depicting intimate interactions with extinct megafauna like mammoths and giant sloths. Hancock and Rogan discuss the even more astounding Cerruti mastodon site in San Diego, where evidence of human butchery dates back 130,000 years, drastically pushing back the accepted timeline of human presence in the Americas.
It's evidence of a remote common origin of this idea. It's when it's found amongst cultures all around the world that apparently had no contact with one another and are often separated by hundreds or thousands of years. The same idea is found about what happens to us after death. The only reasonable explanation I can come up with is that they've all inherited this idea and then developed it in their own ways from a remote common source. And that's one of the main reasons that I'm curious about the possibility of a lost civilization, that these spiritual ideas are found all around the world. And they involve the journey of the soul after death and a leap to the heavens. And sometimes it's called an underworld, but really it's set in the sky. And this journey that takes place where you are judged on what you've done.
The discussion moves to the Amazon rainforest, where Hancock's work with a professional team, including a LiDAR expert, revealed vast geometrical structures and huge earthworks beneath the jungle canopy. He explains that the Amazon is partly a man-made garden, shaped over millennia by humans who cultivated hyper-dominant food plants and created terra preta, an incredibly fertile soil whose creation method remains a mystery to modern science. This supports the idea of lost advanced populations, whose cities were likely consumed by the jungle after being decimated by European diseases. Amazon De-extincion. Once again in episode 1927 with Forrest Galante, Joe sits to talk about this wide-ranging and often startling conversation. Host Joe Rogan and renowned wildlife biologist Forrest Galante embark on a narrative journey exploring everything from elusive cryptids to cutting-edge de-extinction science, always anchored by humanity's complex relationship with the natural world. Their discussion often centers on Forrest Galante's experiences searching for animals thought to be extinct. He recounts his expeditions for the thylacine, or Tasmanian tiger, expressing a strong belief in its continued existence in remote Papua New Guinea, supported by a credible sighting from a state biologist. This leads to a fascinating exploration of other cryptids, like the orang pendek, a purported humanoid ape.
Papua New Guinea.
So they used to range, we got right into this. This is great, by the way. So they used to range from PNG, from New Guinea, all the way down to Tasmania. And then as people came over, they brought dingoes with them, right? And this was like 4,000 years ago. And then the dingoes outcompeted the thylacine in mainland Australia and, in theory, in Papua New Guinea. But dingoes were never introduced into Tasmania, which is why thylacine occurred for so much longer in Tasmania. However, why in Papua New Guinea is because it's such a dramatic habitat. There's so many like valleys and canyons and things that dingoes just probably couldn't traverse. That would mean that there's isolated, unexplored areas that the thylacine, because it had evolved there, could still be thriving without the competition.
And for people who don't know what a thylacine is, it's a Tasmanian tiger.
Yeah. It's a marsupial, wolf, crazy jaw, stripes.
Crazy jaw. Like really wild looking.
180 degrees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool looking animal. Like,
Yeah.
Look at that thing.
So when you talk about, cryptids and blah, 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 I still think that these animals could be out there.
Didn't you go looking for one at one point in time?
Twice.
Twice.
Yeah.
And did you have any sightings or any, at least, amongst the people that you were around, or any credible reports?
No.
How
Well,
so?
reports, yes. I mean, there's a guy named Nick Mooney who is like an incredible, that's Benjamin, the last living thylacine in the zoo in Hobart, Tasmania. A guy named Nick Mooney, who's like a state biologist, like renowned naturalist and biologist, who has no reason to make this up or anything, and he swears that he saw one in Tasmania about 25 years ago. And he's like, I know every animal in Tasmania. I am a biologist. I work with Fish and Game or fish, whatever their equivalent is. He's like, why would I make this up? He's like, I didn't even tell anybody for a year or two because I didn't want to be called a kook.
Wow.
And then he came out with it and sort of began this whole thing. But yeah, I mean, definitely some credible.
While Forrest dismisses a viral video as potentially a naked person, he offers a grounded perspective. Many humanoid sightings might be misinterpreted encounters with isolated tribal people, or even remnant populations of known hominoids like Homo floresiensis or Denisovans, recently confirmed to have coexisted with humans. He also links Bigfoot legends to ancient memories of Gigantopithecus and similarly explains the persistence of thylacines lore in Aboriginal cultures. The conversation then shifts as Forrest talks about the sheer, often brutal, ingenuity of nature. They marvel at parasitic insects like the tarantula hawk wasp, which paralyzes and lays eggs inside a tarantula, whose larva then consumes the spider alive. The mind-controlling cordyceps fungus, which manipulates ants' brains before exploding with spores, and the notorious kangaroo fish, a tiny Amazonian catfish known to swim up human urethras, illustrates nature's more bizarre and terrifying aspects. Forrest uses the incredible collective intelligence of army ants, forming living bridges, to underscore the hive mind concept and the vast biomass of insects.
While we're on the dick hole conversation, do you know about the kangaroo?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know how they have to get it out?
No.
Okay, so for those that don't know,
Just so you know, I didn't make
Chinese boy 12 shoved the thermometer down his look at like how they write thermometer in all capital letters down his penis, needs it surgically removed from his bladder after pushing it too far.
Dude.
Oh,
He-
Jesus.
He dealt with it for 9 hours.
But look at this. Boy opted to insert the object into he opted. He opted.
I suppose.
It's just like, choosing your insurance policy. He opted to insert the object into his urethra. A risky practice. It's risky. It's called sounding. It's got a name, so it's so common. People are so crazy that they're just been stuffing stuff up their dick so many times they came up with a name for it. When it got stuck, he endured agonizing pain for 9 hours before seeking help. Chinese medics extracted the tool by cutting a tiny surgical hole in his bladder. Yikes.
It definitely didn't come from any app. I'm sure that idea.
Ugh.
I'm sure you didn't get the idea from an app.
From an app?
Yeah.
Why
Where would a
for an app?
12-year-old? Where would a 12-year-old get an idea like that?
Oh, like TikTok?
He's saying
Oh,
it's a TikTok thing.
sure.
Yeah.
You think so?
I'm not saying that.
We probably just go. Well, their TikTok is very regulated.
I've never used it.
You're right. We're just talking out of our ass. It's a good point. Very good point.
Kangaroo.
Yeah. So you should explain what it is. It swims up your dick hole.
So it's this tiny parasitic catfish in the Amazon, and what it does is it's attracted to urea, which comes out of fish's gills, and it's a parasite, so it swims into fish's gills and lodges its spines into those fish's gills to feed. But this nasty little bugger, because it's attracted to urea, will swim up your urethra. Now that's all fine and well, if you will. But it has reversed facing spines, so once it swims in, there's no swimming back out. The same spines it uses to lodge into fish gills. No, that's a lamprey. That's nonsense. But once it's lodged in, the only way to get it out is to butterfly and lift it out.
Oh, God.
I'm not even going to say it. But
How often does that happen?
I don't think it's very regular, but yeah. I can tell you when I'm in the Amazon, I'm like peeing back and forth just because I'm scared something will like swim up the stream.
Yeah, when you pee, like, are these people peeing with pants on?
I think
like,
so,
do they
yeah.
wear shorts
Board
and it still
shorts or-
swims up the legs and gets in there?
I mean, I think it's just incredibly unlucky, but it's happened a lot more than once. It's a relatively regular thing.
Oh, is that an operation?
Oh, look at that Reddit picture. That's not real.
Yeah.
That's not
Jesus.
real, but that's funny.
But this one is probably. It's
Oh
on
my
its leg, not.
God,
anything.
get out
This
of
one-
here. Oh, get out of here. I don't want to see this.
Yeah. It's a fun show.
Yeah, everything's trying to kill you. Everything's trying to kill you. But I go into the forest with a peaceful intention. I am your friend. I'm here to wander.
Please,
Do not eat
please,
me.
fish, don't swim up into my urinary tract.
Plus, I only eat vegetables, so they know that I'm in harmony. Well, so does a deer, bitch. The deer only eat vegetables, too. They fuck them up.
She's going to be listening to this podcast and be very upset.
She does not listen to my podcast. I will guarantee you that. She's a nice lady.
Their narrative shifts to humanity's profound, often destructive impact on ecosystems. They discuss the rapid reproduction of pigs, which, introduced by Spaniards, now number millions in the U.S., necessitating extreme eradication methods like the Judas goat on islands. Forrest shares his ongoing personal battle with a habituated black bear and her cub in his Santa Barbara yard, highlighting the challenges of managing wildlife in suburban areas where hunting is restricted and animals become accustomed to human food. The conversation also revisits the historical decimation of Native American populations by smallpox, questioning the notion of purposeful introduction by emphasizing their lack of immunity, which also contributed to the collapse of vast Amazonian civilizations. These Amazonian cities, Joe and Forrest note, are now being revealed by LiDAR technology, showing a man-made garden with complex structures and fertile terra preta soil, challenging previous preconceptions of the rainforest as pristine wilderness. A significant portion of their story focuses on groundbreaking de-extinction efforts. Forrest excitedly details colossal biosciences, ambitious plans to bring back the woolly mammoth and the thylacine. Using Indian elephant DNA and CRISPR technology, they aim to create mammoths to rewild Siberia's Pleistocene Park, reversing permafrost melt and carbon emissions. The thylacine and its well-preserved DNA is also a target, though an artificial womb is required due to the size of its closest living relative. Forrest vehemently advocates for radical conservation, asserting that traditional methods are failing and innovative approaches, like reintroducing bison to the American Prairie Reserve, are essential for restoring ecological balance.
Company. So it's this guy, Ben Lamb, and he's got George Church, who's a world-leading cellular scientist. I don't know the specifics, of de-extinction and cloning and CRISPR and so on and so forth. And they've come together and raised a ton of money, and they are de-extincting animals. And the science is there, like it's done. All it took was the money basically behind it. And they've put together this incredible Rolodex of scientists and people, and it's real life Jurassic Park with purpose.
Where are they going to put them?
So there's a couple different things going on. So the first one they're working on is the woolly mammoth, right? And this isn't just for fun. This has real, important conservation implications, which is really fascinating. But they are planning on starting with, I think, 100 mammoths and putting them in this place called not Pleistocene Park, something like that. This park in Siberia that they've been doing this experiment on as to what happens when you add megafauna back into the Arctic tundra to offset carbon.
The dialogue briefly touches on diet and health, with Joe advocating for a carnivore diet with fruit for optimal energy and mental clarity, criticizing modern food guidelines that prioritize processed foods over nutrient-dense options like organ meats. They note that organs like liver are favored by top predators, underscoring their vital nutritional value. Finally, the narrative returns to the broader theme of ecological crisis, particularly in the oceans. Forrest discusses mercury and arsenic bioaccumulation in fish and the alarming rate of marine life depletion, e.g. 100 million sharks annually, but remains hopeful that human intervention can restore the oceans within years if radical changes are made. He critiques the human disconnect from nature, exemplified by monocultural palm oil plantations in Borneo that replace vibrant jungles with silent, barren landscapes.
How much time is there left in the ocean for these fish? If you think about how quickly, we want to talk about how we wiped out woolly mammoths and we wiped out bison. We are wiping out fish at a fucking staggering rate.
An alarming rate, yeah.
Yeah.
And what's crazy, before we talk about how much time is left, scientists predict that 8 years is all it would take to bring it back to 100%, or maybe it was 98%.
What?
If we stopped fishing the ocean for 8 years, it would be back to nearly 100% fecundancy, 100% perfect, nearly.
But we'd have to get all the countries on board.
Yeah,
that means
it's
for
impossible.
8 years, all the fishermen would starve.
And not to mention, fish is the primary source of protein for the majority of the planet.
Is it really?
Creepy nature of bats. In episode 1932, Merlin Tuttle, a bat scientist, shared a most remarkable and captivating story about bats throughout his career, highlighting their unique biology, ecological importance, and often misunderstood nature. His intriguing story centers on the bat colony in Austin, Texas. When Merlin first arrived, bats were widely feared, with news headlines claiming hundreds of thousands of rabid bats were invading and attacking the citizens of Austin. This fear was largely due to a fear of the unknown and planted stories in the news media by pest control and health people that made money off fear of bats. people genuinely believed articles describing families trapped in their homes with bats attacking windows.
That's in Austin, Texas.
That's right. Actually, I moved to Austin because there are a lot of bats here, but there wouldn't be probably still a lot of bats if it hadn't been for my moving. When I first began to be interested in conserving bats, Austin was making more negative publicity about bats than any other place probably in the world. There were news headlines from coast to coast saying that hundreds of thousands of rabid bats were invading and attacking the citizens of Austin.
And was that nonsense?
Absolutely.
Why do you think people have this fear of bats?
Fear of the unknown. I mean, you're probably not totally unaffected. I mean, I know I am. When I'm much more nervous about taking off in a plane than riding to the airport in a taxi. And yet the taxi is far more dangerous than the plane.
Statistically speaking.
Right. But we fear what we don't know, and it's very, very few people know much about bats, and so they're easily misunderstood and scared. And in those days, if a bat tried to catch a mosquito near somebody, the person would run like hell thinking that they were being attacked, and they'd never even look around to see the bat catch the mosquito and go on his way. And in fact, I had one guy that claimed he was actually, the bat actually did attack him. And when I looked at the evidence of the attack, I found these big scratches on his arm that a bat couldn't have inflicted. And turned out he'd run too close to a rose bush on his way to the house and got bit by the rose bush and blamed the bat.
To counteract this, Merlin began showing people live bats. He recalled Miss Crenshaw, a golfer's mother, who initially mocked bat conservation but exclaimed, "Oh, isn't he cute?" upon seeing a bat up close. Merlin asserts that bats are their own best ambassadors because they're gentle animals that almost never bite anything except an insect or fruit, except in self-defense. His efforts successfully convinced Austin not to eradicate the bats, transforming them into a local treasure that now generates millions of tourist dollars and consumes tons of crop and yard pests every night.
But all it took to overcome that is I ended up getting a bat of the kind that lives under the bridge, and I'd take him around and show him to people. And I remember one lady, actually it was Ms. Crenshaw, the famous golfer's mother. She thought, when she first heard I was conserving bats, she told her friends, she said, "What next? Somebody's going to be trying to conserve cockroaches." But the first time I actually showed her a live bat in the hand, she was like, "Oh, isn't he cute?" A whole different response. And so bats, once people meet them, they're their own best ambassadors. They're gentle animals that almost never bite anything except an insect or fruit, except in self-defense. And all I had to do was come to Austin and point out that this was a treasure not yet recognized. And because of convincing Austin not to eradicate the bats, today they bring millions of tourist dollars every summer to Austin, and they eat tons of crop and yard pests every night.
So that's what's important for people to understand, is they actually serve a very important purpose in the ecosystem, right?
Yes. A major part of my success in conserving bats has been that I look at it from a standpoint not just that bats or other animals have rights or anything. It's a matter of, like them or not, we need them. And if we understand them, we'll probably like them too.
Merlin also detailed the extraordinary physical attributes of bats. Brazilian free-tailed bats, common in Austin, can reach speeds of 100 miles an hour with a tailwind and cross 4 to 5 counties in 12 minutes, as observed on Doppler weather radar. He explained that bats are by far the most maneuverable best flyers in the world because their wings are made of skin rated 9 times tougher than a surgeon's glove and are more flexible than bird feathers or insect chitin. Their healing powers are remarkable. Some bats can even continue to fly and survive with a broken wing due to swelling acting as a natural cast.
But then a genetic study was done and found that they're so broadly mixed genetically that you couldn't separate out subspecies, and so they went back to the original name, and it's now called the Brazilian free-tailed bat, which is kind of a pain for all of us that knew it for many years as the Mexican free-tailed bat. But that's just the way of genetics. Sometimes I like the common names even better than the scientific because they don't seem to change as rapidly these days.
So, and what is the other bat that's very common here?
It's not very common.
Less common, but prevalent?
Yeah, the cave myotis. It's a slower flying, more agile, maneuverable bat. The free-tailed bats can fly thousands of feet above ground, and they can travel at, get this, with a tailwind, they can go 100 miles an hour.
What?
100 miles an hour. And our bats from the bridge could easily be feeding clear down on the coast at some nights. I've watched on Doppler weather radar. We can watch them really well on radar. And I've watched where they come out of, let's say, Bracken Cave down near San Antonio, and we see the front band of moving bats crossing 4 to 5 counties in 12 minutes.
Wow. Despite their remarkable traits, Merlin lamented that bats are among the most rapidly declining animals, most endangered animals on the planet. Their vulnerability stems from their slow reproductive rates, typically 1 pup per year, and their tendency to aggregate in huge, conspicuous colonies, making them easy targets for mass killings driven by fear and misconceptions. And just like that, the road gets darker, the air colder, and the stories stranger. From ghostly visions to confessions on the edge of madness, the Joe Rogan Experience proves one real thing. Real life is often creepier than fiction. Hit subscribe for more mind-bending moments and drop a comment with the creepiest Joe Rogan story you've heard.